Hello and welcome to An Unpolished Earthling. Today we'll be continuing on with the manifesto, Gaia United, a pragmatic path to a healthy future. In this episode, we'll go over the addendum. So we have basically covered everything in the manifesto already, including the conclusion, frequently asked questions, and all of that. The addendum is not really important, so if you don't want to watch this one, you don't have to. But if you're curious, let's go over some silly thoughts. So, we have three things I'm going to talk about. The inability for old world systems to achieve real world changes, Marx, and PRT, personal rapid transit. So, first one. The inability for old world systems to achieve real world changes. A concrete example of what I mean is the European Union's biofuel fiasco. After discussions in the United Nations about the climate change problem, the European Union decided to mandate that 10% of all vehicular fuel in the Union must be biofuel by 2010. This sounds good, for if one grows the fuel that one burns, then one has a net zero carbon cycle. By mandating such a large volume of fuel to be used where it was not being used before, in a supply and demand economy, the price of that fuel skyrockets. So essentially, if fuel is $1 a liter, and you have a certain demand and a certain supply, but suddenly you increase that demand without increasing the supply, that will cause the price to go up, and it did. So this encourages the production of biofuel because now it's more profitable to make biofuel. Unfortunately, and that was the point of that policy, because they wanted people to grow more biofuel. Unfortunately, in the real world, we only have so much space, and we're already using it all. Well, except for what little is left of wilderness. So when we want to grow more stuff, we need more space, which usually results in forests being chopped down to plant crops like oil palms and corn. Since corn can be made into ethanol, there is now less corn available for eating as it's being sold to be burned. The increase in the price of corn for eating made tortillas in Mexico, to name just one of the many places and one of the many foods made with them, more expensive, which pushed poor people living there further into poverty. So imagine the staple of your diet just went up, say, 50% in cost. You've got nothing to do with Europe. You're living in South America, but now you're having a hard time buying what was once one of your cheapest food substances because of what someone else is doing on the other side of the world. That sucks for you if you're not very rich, which is a lot of people. Shortly after the European Union's announcement and the realization that the Malaysian government had been chopping down once protected rainforest, right? You have to chop down forests to make space for more farms? Well, in Malaysia, they had a protected rainforest and they removed the protection of that rainforest so that they could chop down the rainforest so they could plant oil palms. And those oil palms were to be made for biofuel to export to Europe. Now, they already started doing that, destroying rainforest to plant oil palms to burn in people's cars in Europe. But once they did that, research was done which shows that oil palms are an exceedingly inefficient source of biofuel and is now considered dirty biofuel. And just like the Canadian tar sands have been considered dirty oil because of its energy investment intensity. So for the amount of water and sunlight and space and effort that it takes to put into an oil palm to make it productive, the amount of energy you get from it is not very much. Now, as a result of this, the European Union decided that they will not be buying any of the oil palm biofuel that was created at the expense of rainforest. That doesn't mean the rainforest came back overnight, though. Once it's chopped down, it takes quite a while to regrow. Now, the EU biofuel regulation sprung from the virtuous intention of trying to solve the climate crisis. Literally, leaders of the world, get together. We've got a problem. We need to solve it. What are we able to do? We make policies and laws for a government. Oh, I know. Let's make a law to encourage people to make healthy fuel. That's all they can do. And it seems like a good idea. But despite this virtuous intention, the negative consequences were that protected rainforest was destroyed. Okay? Poverty was increased. And overall greenhouse gas emissions were increased because of destroying the rainforest. And obsolete internal combustion engine infrastructure, which is a huge waste of energy and a huge impact on the environment, was maintained. The only success of the whole fiasco is that profit was and will be made by the few biofuel companies that will be selling their profit to the European Union. So there you go. Your intention is to help the world. You do exactly the opposite. You make the problem worse. You hurt millions of people around the world, and the only benefit is profit for a handful of people, right? That's our economy. This is our system. It is always designed to make profit. If you don't make profit, what are you doing? You want to be a charity? You need money from somewhere, which comes from someone else making profit, right? So that is an example for why I have no faith whatsoever in any of the international agreements, policies, designs, Kyoto Accord, Paris Agreement, United Nations sustainability goals. Like, honestly, we're doing another video on that in a moment. We'll look up where we've come with the United Nations sustainability goals. That's, again, the whole world getting together saying, let's do good. Did they do good? No, of course they didn't do good. They mean to do good. I do believe the people working on it have best intentions. They want to do good. But their tool, their ability to act, is through a profit-based system, profit only, profit, profit, profit. And that has nothing to do with doing good or being altruistic or looking after the planet. Like, literally, imagine you're in the Malaysian government and you're told, hey, the world wants to help with climate change. Oh, I know what I'll do. I'll chop down protected rainforest and burn it, destroy it. That's how I'll help the environment. That's literally what happened. It's insane. So this is why one of the many reasons, like if you've been watching my series and you don't understand now that the economic system we're in is really stupid. It's suicidal. It's destructive. It's brutal. It's horrible. If you don't know we need to change it, then just look at that one, where even when it wants to do good, it does bad. That's just what it is. It's a bad system. And I'm upset about it. So let's move on here. Marxism. Let's talk about Marx. So this one is quite out of context, and I have looked up on Wikipedia again because, and other sources, because I just wanted to clarify a few things. And I feel like when I see people talk about communism, socialism, and Marxism on the internet, which is often done through simple means and not very well put together conversations and discussions, I don't think everyone understands it very well. And then I wonder where some of that confusion might come from. In an anthropology course I recently took, this was 10 years ago, we discussed Karl Marx's critique of capitalism and what he got wrong, he being Marx. We considered that Marx thought that the working class around the world would have to awaken to transcend their cultural and political boundaries and unite to overcome a recognized common source of misery, capitalism. However, as Eric Wolf states in our textbook, that's the author of the textbook, upon Marx's death, the world was experiencing a growth in nationalism. The working classes within each nation focused their attention on local solidarity against the other in the form of threatening foreign nations. This prevented unity across cultures and redirected discontent away from capitalists. I don't think that Marx was wrong. I think that the historical circumstances were simply unusual, but the source of discontent is still present and growing. Nationalism is not intrinsic to nature and could disappear or at the very least weaken. Until the creation of suffering is no longer a part of the system will not be stable. So where I'm coming from here is I think that you watching and every other human being in the world are a lot more alike each other than you are a typical Chinese person or a Russian person or an English person or a French person. I think you're a person who happen to live in an area of the world where the noises you make with your mouth sound a little more like this or a little more like that, okay? I think that you all have come from families, and all at least aspire to have families. You care about the people in your life. You like social contact. I'm immediately thinking about all of the random individuals who don't quite fit those things, because some people are not all alike. We're all different. But we're more alike despite our differences than we are different. And that's what Marx was getting at, is that if you are living in England and you're working in a factory that is not paying you well, giving you bad hours, does not provide health care, and it's dangerous conditions, and you might be a child working in that factory, that is abusive, that is exploiting you, that is not a good life. And if you live in France in a factory, same thing. And if you live in China in a factory, same thing. And if you live in America in a factory, same thing. You are being abused, you're being taken advantage of, your life is not doing good, you're not healthy. And so if you realize that the difference between the rich people who control everything and make you work for them without them actually doing much freaking work themselves, that separation between the rich and the poor is a way bigger difference than the difference between a factory worker in Germany, or a factory worker in Taiwan, or a factory worker in Korea, or a factory worker in Japan, or a factory worker in Bolivia. It's that inequality is so much bigger between the classes than it is between the cultures. And that's what Marx was hoping that people would realize. And when you do realize that, the very small group of people who are abusing the rest of us, we should work against them. But instead, the wealthy and powerful in one country make the poor, oppressed people go and fight and kill the poor, oppressed people in the other country for the glory of the nation that's oppressing them. For the glory of England, defeat the French. For the glory of Germany, fight the Poles, whatever it be. But it's really the elite abusing and misusing and hurting the poor and getting the poor to kill each other. It's not very often that the king goes onto the battlefield, right? And so if we understood what Marx was saying, we'd say, screw those people, screw those wealthy people. We ordinary human beings want to live on the planet well. Let's get together and make that happen. And in my view, that is Marxism. To be fair, the fine details of how that would happen weren't really well put together, and hence communism and socialism and everything else that came out of it is what came out of it. And I don't think we ever really had a true Marxist state, because like my idea requires a global revolution and change, that was the same for Marx. It required transcending our political boundaries and our economic boundaries and realizing that we are more alike as individual human beings than we are as the labels that have been put upon us. And yeah, I wish that everyone arguing about communism and capitalism and the internet would just see that and get that and understand that. And then that's the point of it. Next one, PRT. So I'm going to do some digging online to throw up some images and pictures on this. This is personal rapid transit. It is the idea of having a light monorail broken down to a personal scale. So this is to solve the transportation problem in future high-tech eco-cities. PRT is not necessary for all of humanity, but in terms of helping you understand the difference between the current modern city and what a holistically designed high-tech eco-city could look like, PRT is probably the most visually obvious things to think about. So I'll just read through here and then clarify after. Imagine in every neighborhood on every block or so, you have a small station that connects to a spider web-like grid that encompasses the entire city. You walk out of your door, go 20 meters and hit a button. 30 seconds later, a small pod comes along a rail and stops in front of you with a door opening. You hop in, touch a touchscreen map to say where you want to go, and a second later the pod smoothly and silently zooms off to your destination. The pods are raised above ground so you can walk under them, and they never have to stop to wait for pedestrians. They never have accidents, there is no drunk driving, and a 12-year-old could operate it with ease. There are no roads, parking lots, mechanic shops, car dealerships, driveways, car washes, or gas stations. There is no more need for these are Canadian ones and American ones, but there's no more need for a 7-Eleven, Max, Husky, and Esso. These are gas stations and convenience stores. on all four corners of an intersection. That happens where you have an intersection and each corner is a different convenience store. The city could literally be half the size, and half the size means half the energy to move from A to B. The pod doesn't have an engine or a drivetrain, as it runs on the track with a moderate magnetic motor and is thus a little bit lighter than a car. If you consider electrical efficiencies, shorter distances, and lighter loads, the PRT system is between 50 to 75% more efficient than a car. Consider the ecological footprint reclaimed from the smaller city, and you have now achieved a transportation system that is ecologically viable and provides greater functionality and safety than a traditional automobile system. The only catch is you have to build a whole new city, or you will end up making a PRT system along the skeleton of the old city, making it twice as big as it needs to be and losing the efficiency gains we seek. So what I'm talking about here, which I covered pretty well, is that if you look at a city from space, the footprint of that city means that there is no rainforest growing there. And so the amount of biocapacity or productive bioproduction from the planet in a year is reduced because you've cut out a chunk of it and you've slapped it with concrete and nothing's growing through it anymore. So that is a constant impact every year. If you're able to reduce the size of the city, you're able to have wilderness again and parks and productive land that increases biocapacity. This is a good thing. Also, if you're moving an object like a car from A to B, there's a certain amount of energy required to move it over that distance. If the distance between those two things is half, that's half the energy. So when we're looking at in places like North America, where we have to reduce our ecological impact by 85% or so, if you just make a car an electric car, but you have a regular coal-powered plant powering that car, you don't actually save any energy at all. So if you had a wind turbines, solar panels, and other sources of renewable energy for power, you do save your impact on the environment a bit. You're still taking up space with all of those power plants, but you save some pollution from that. But the amount of energy to move the car from A to B is still the same amount of energy. So if you look at the total energy consumption of the city, and you thought, well, how much are we sacrificing just to move these electric cars around? If we had a different system, you could save half of that energy, which is a huge amount of energy, which could go into making life a lot more, into making a higher quality of life for everyone. There's a lot of other places that energy could go. Using a PRT system means that instead of having a sidewalk and a road and then a sidewalk, you just have one sidewalk. And the lamppost on that sidewalk is where the rail of the track is going up above your head. So you can shrink all these things together, which means where you had 4 convenience stores next to each other, you just have one convenience store. Where you have your gas stations, parking lots, all that other stuff I mentioned, it's just gone. Where you have your house, your driveway, it's gone. The garage, it's gone. So you shrink and you shrink and you shrink and you shrink. And now maybe you don't even need to drive from your house to the grocery store because it's only a 10-minute walk instead of a 20-minute walk like it used to be. So once we do that, we get the kinds of 80 or 90% efficiency gains that we're looking for, and we have a better transportation system than we've ever had before. And so if you understand PRT, you'll see that the future is really, really awesome if we do this. And you'll also see why we cannot retrofit our cities, because if you just put the PRT track on the city where it is now, you haven't saved any space, which means that's half of your efficiency gain gone, lost, wasted, and you're still having a mess with everything else. So being able to design cities from scratch allows us to do things that are incredible, that we can just never ever do with the current cities we have if we retrofit them. And that's just one of the many, many reasons for why I do believe we need to build new cities from scratch for people who want a high material quality of life. If you don't care about high technology, you do not need this kind of city to be sustainable. There are many cultures around the world that are already sustainable in a, I don't really want to use the word primitive, but in a less technologically advanced way. For example, the country of Bhutan which is, I would not say primitive at all. I think in many ways they're more advanced than most of the rest of the world. But in a technological capacity, they are not the leaders of high-tech stuff. They are, however, the only country in the world that is carbon negative. So they are not only sustainable, they're actually a positive influence on the planet, and as far as I know, the only positive influence country on the planet. And they are doing this without stuff like a PRT system. So they don't need any advice from me. They don't need to change at all. They are an example to the world of what is possible. But if you like having a laptop and playing computer games with your friends online, or you're just used to the luxuries of a modern lifestyle, you will likely not want to follow in the footsteps of Bhutan. And to have what you want but not hurt the planet, in that case, a high-tech, holistically designed eco-city is necessary, and technologies like a PRT system are the kinds of things that make it possible and that you would find there. And they're pretty cool, so I recommend you look it up on your own time. Right, so that's it for this series of manifesto videos. There is also in the manifesto a blank vote that if you were to have this in your hands or read it online, you could go through yourself and see what it would be like. Of course, that doesn't actually have the computer system to process your vote yet. So right now when you do it, it's your own imagination. But I think that's very important because it will get you thinking of the kinds of freedom you could have if we make the system real. And you might dream up things that you never thought possible before when you think of what you really want to see in your life and what kind of culture you want and how you would want to do it. And also when it comes to thinking about the impacts of things, like how much of your energy should go towards food, or how much of it is it going to take to make yourself a new snowboard every year. And I think that the more people think this way, I mean, like in terms of this snowboard is this much ecological impact, instead of in today's system where the snowboard is this many hours for a person working at McDonald's or only 1 hour for a lawyer. That way of thinking, it's useless. Like, you don't understand what you're dealing with then, because the money is not real and the time's not real, and all you know is it's distorted and it's not equal, and there's no freaking reason why that person should work 1 hour while that person works a week for the same thing. The values just doesn't make sense. But if you look at it as, this is what this item is, like this snowboard is this much energy, it's this much impact, doesn't matter who you are, this is what it takes to make it, it makes things a lot more real and a lot more understandable, and I think sane. I think that people growing up in a world where things are what they are, like to say, I want to go to a monster truck rally because it's fun and I don't care, and you have no idea what the impact is, and it only costs you $20 for the ticket, which is an hour of your life, it doesn't mean anything. But if you had to say, oh, I can't go to the monster truck rally unless I give up a portion of my energy budget to allow that arena to exist and to grow the fuel for those cars and to mine the metals for those things and to process them, that impact is huge. And if you saw that, you might think, is 1 hour of entertainment worth 10% of all of my energy for the year? I don't know. Then you can make real decisions. Whereas today, I don't think it's very easy for people to make real decisions. Anyway, I hope you have enjoyed watching the series. I hope it's been informative. And I hope that you would now also like to see a world that is healthy, sustainable, equal, and free. And please talk to everyone you know about Gaia United. And also, if you have a better name for it, I really don't care about the name. Gaia United, Gaia is the living earth, Gaia United is the living earth united. It makes sense to me. But whatever we want to call it, as long as it works, that'd be great. Thank you very much for your time. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I hope we can make a better life together.